The champagne floated. That was the first sign that someone had spent too much money on this party. Julian Cross watched the golden bubbles drift in lazy spirals through the banquet hall, suspended in carefully calibrated anti-gravity fields that some engineer had probably worked overtime to perfect. Around him, delegates from 9 systems laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, their translator implants creating a half-second delay that made every conversation feel slightly wrong. He'd been to 43 of these summits. He was 31 years old. Julian adjusted his collar, real silk, imported from Earth at stupid expense, and manufactured his networking smile. Across the hall, the Martian trade minister was holding court near a holographic ice sculpture that cycled through the flags of member worlds. Julian should walk over. He should say something charming about tariff agreements. He should care. Instead, he drifted toward the buffet table, because at least the food didn't expect him to pretend enthusiasm about quarterly projections. That's when he saw her. She stood alone by the appetizers, wearing a gray dress that looked like she'd borrowed it from someone's closet without asking. No jewelry, no augments visible at her temples, no entourage hovering 3 steps behind like remora fish. She was studying the canapé selection with the intensity of a scientist examining alien artifacts, occasionally picking up items and eating them with methodical efficiency. Her ears came to delicate points, barely visible through dark hair she'd pulled back with what looked like an actual elastic band. Not the decorative kind. The kind that cost 15 credits for a pack of 50. Julian found himself walking toward her, drawn by sheer novelty. In a room full of people performing wealth, she was committing the cardinal sin of appearing genuine. "The quail eggs are surprisingly good," he offered, sliding into position beside her. She glanced at him, popped a spring roll into her mouth, chewed, swallowed. "I'm only here for the free food." Julian blinked. In 4 years of running Cross Dynamics, no one had ever responded to his opening lines with complete disinterest. He felt something unfamiliar crack in his chest. It might have been his ego. It might have been delight. "That's honest. My supervisor had an extra pass. She said the catering was legendary. I said I'd take maintenance shifts for a month if she gave it to me." The woman selected another spring roll, examined it critically. "Worth it. These are excellent." Julian realized he was smiling. Actually smiling, not the corporate version. "Julian Cross," he said, extending his hand. She wiped her fingers on a napkin before shaking. Her grip was strong, calloused. "Sera, you're blocking the dumplings." He stepped aside. She loaded 3 onto her plate. Somewhere behind them, a string quartet played Venusian mood harmonics while someone discussed fusion reactor patents. Sera ate a dumpling and closed her eyes briefly, savoring. "You're not a delegate," Julian said. "Nope, maintenance technician, deck 47. She gestured vaguely downward with a dumpling. "I keep the gravity working, so you people don't float away during your parties." "That sounds important." "It is. You'd be surprised how many important people forget about basic physics when they're 3 drinks in." Julian laughed. He couldn't remember the last time he'd actually laughed at something. "What do your people do? Originally, I mean, your homeworld." Sera shrugged, reaching for a small plate of something purple and glazed. "Live, work. Try not to take ourselves too seriously." She bit into the purple thing, made an appreciative noise. "Oh, that's good. What is that?" "Probably costs more than my first car." "Your loss for not eating it then." Behind them, someone called his name. Julian Cross, needed for networking. Julian Cross, CEO of Cross Dynamics. Julian Cross, who suddenly wanted nothing more than to stand here and watch this strange woman systematically work her way through an overpriced buffet like it was her job. "I should," he started. "Yeah, you should," Sera agreed, not looking at him, already moving toward the dessert section. But Julian didn't move. Not yet. Julian found himself back at the buffet table 20 minutes later, having abandoned a conversation about lithium extraction rights on Europa. The Martian minister had looked genuinely confused when Julian excused himself mid-sentence. But Julian had stopped caring somewhere between profit margins and fiscal quarter. Sera had moved to the dessert station. She was engaged in what appeared to be a serious internal debate between 2 nearly identical pastries. The one on the left has trace amounts of Callisto honey, Julian said. The right one is just sugar and regret. She picked up both. I'll conduct a scientific comparison. That's the spirit. You came back. She bit into the left pastry, considered it thoughtfully. People usually don't come back. People usually. Don't tell me they're only here for free food. People should be more honest then, might save everyone some time. She tried the other pastry, nodded decisively. Left one wins, wanna try. Julian accepted the half-eaten pastry, suddenly aware this was the least CEO thing he'd done in years. So what does a Deck 47 maintenance technician do when she's not crashing elite banquets? Keeps your toilets from backing up, fixes air recyclers, stops hull breaches from killing everyone. Sera selected something chocolate. You know, the unimportant stuff. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. You meant what's your real job, like fixing life support systems is somehow fake. But she was smiling slightly, taking the edge off. I also read. Play chess badly. Argue with my sister over subspace calls. Normal things. Your sister is. Back home, yeah, outer reaches. Colony world your corporation probably couldn't find on a map. Julian winced. Terraforming and resource extraction, actually. We do find places on maps. It's kind of our whole thing. And charge premium rent once you make them habitable. Sera licked chocolate from her thumb. I looked you up while you were gone. Hollow computer over there by the wall. Julian Cross, boy genius CEO, youngest person to ever run a major terraforming operation. She turned to look at him directly, those pointed ears catching the light. So why are you eating stolen pastries with me instead of networking? Maybe I'm here for the free food too. You paid for the food. Try again. Julian grabbed a champagne glass from a passing server, actual human servers, because apparently robots weren't fancy enough, and drained it. Honest answer. That'd be refreshing. Because you're the first person in 3 years who's talked to me like I'm just some guy. Sera considered this, selected another pastry. You are just some guy. Expensive suit doesn't change that. My people have a saying. The tree doesn't become the forest just because it grew tall. Your people sound annoyingly wise. We have our moments. Also, we throw excellent festivals and make terrible beer. It balances out. Someone behind them laughed too hard at something. A holographic display shifted, showing real-time trade statistics from 6 worlds. The string quartet had been replaced by a belter throat singer whose performance was probably considered very avant-garde by people who enjoyed being uncomfortable. What's terraforming like? Sera asked, surprising him. Actually doing it, not the quarterly reports version. Julian blinked. Nobody asked him that. They asked about profits, timelines, competitor strategies. Never the actual work. It's like teaching a dead world to breathe again. You start with rock and ice and nothing, and you build an atmosphere molecule by molecule. Seed oceans. Engineer bacteria that can survive anything. Wait decades, it's patient work. Doesn't sound patient, sounds audacious. Maybe both. And then you sell it to the highest bidder. We provide opportunities. You sell it, but she wasn't attacking, just stating facts. Which is fine. Somebody has to, but don't dress it up. Julian found himself nodding. Fair. Besides, you already said molecule by molecule. That was honest. That was the part you actually care about. Sera finished her champagne, set down the glass. The rest is just the job around the job. You're very observant for someone who claims to be here for appetizers. I'm an excellent multitasker. The banquet hall stretched around them, full of important people having important conversations about important things. Julian had 4 more strategic interactions scheduled before the night ended. His assistant was probably having an anxiety attack, wondering where he'd gone. Would you want to, I don't know, get coffee sometime? The words came out before Julian could corporate speak them into something smooth. Sera raised an eyebrow. Are you asking me on a date, Julian Cross? I'm asking if you'd like coffee. If that becomes a date, we can negotiate terms then. She laughed, really laughed. Deck 47, Section C maintenance office. Tomorrow, 1400 hours. Bring your own coffee, though. Ours tastes like recycled despair. I can work with that. We'll see. Deck 47 smelled like ozone and honest work. Julian stepped out of the executive lift. He'd had to override 3 security protocols to get it to descend this far, and immediately felt overdressed. His casual clothes, carefully selected this morning to look effortlessly approachable, probably cost more than the monthly maintenance budget for this entire section. A worker in coveralls glanced at him, did a double take, then deliberately looked away. Julian suspected he'd be the subject of break room gossip within minutes. He found Section C down a corridor where the walls showed their rivets and the lighting flickered occasionally in a way that suggested someone should probably fix that. The maintenance office was smaller than his private bathroom. Sera sat at a workbench surrounded by disassembled machinery, something sparking gently under her hands. "You actually came," she said, not looking up. "I brought coffee." He held up 2 containers from the station's overpriced cafe. Allegedly the best on Zenith Prime. That's a low bar. She set down her tools, accepted a container, sipped, made a face. "Okay, that's pretty good. Still overpriced." "How do you know it's overpriced?" "Because you brought it." She gestured at the parts spread before her. "Gravity regulator. Northern Quadrant's been experiencing fluctuations. Turns out someone installed a cheap knockoff component that's slowly failing. Wanna help?" Julian stared at the mechanical guts of the device. "I don't know anything about gravity regulators." "You went to university, right? Engineering." "Theoretical physics, but that was 10 years ago. So you know how gravity works. The rest is just applied common sense and not being afraid to get dirty." Sera tossed him a rag. "Unless the CEO of Cross Dynamics is too important for actual work." Julian shed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves. "Tell me what to do." For the next 2 hours, he learned that keeping a space station functioning was harder than he'd imagined. Sera explained the intricacies of artificial gravity fields while guiding his hands through calibrations, occasionally swatting his fingers when he reached for the wrong tool. She was patient when he asked stupid questions, merciless when he made assumptions. "My homeworld doesn't have all this," she said, tightening a bolt he'd stripped. "Mostly standard gravity, natural atmosphere. We built our settlements into crystalline forests. The trees sing when wind passes through them. Different frequencies carry different meanings. That's what the ears are for, hearing the songs. Partially, also excellent for eavesdropping." She grinned. "I can hear your assistant trying to call you. Your pocket's been buzzing for 20 minutes. Julian pulled out his holocom, silenced it without checking. 17 missed calls. "They'll survive." "Will they?" "Maybe your company's collapsing without you." "If it collapses in 2 hours, it deserved to collapse." Sera laughed, handed him a smaller tool. "Here, hold this steady while I recalibrate, and tell me something real." "Real?" "You spent 3 hours at a banquet making small talk. Now you're in my workshop playing technician. What are you actually doing here, Julian?" He focused on holding the tool steady, watching her deft fingers work. "Everyone in my life wants something. Board members want profits. Investors want growth. Competitors want failure. Even friends, especially friends, want access or favor or just the reflected glory of knowing someone's successful. And I want free food, so I'm different. You want free food and you don't pretend otherwise. You're not calculating advantage, you're just..." He struggled for words. "Present, here, real." "That sounds lonely." She didn't say it with pity, just observation. "It is." The regulator hummed as Sera brought it back online. She ran diagnostics, nodded satisfaction. "There, Northern Quadrant won't have their furniture floating away." She wiped grease from her hands, studied him. "My people have another saying. The tallest tree stands alone, but even it needs roots." More wisdom. More common sense dressed up fancy. She stood, stretched. Those pointed ears tilted slightly, catching some sound he couldn't hear. "Your assistant's coming. 12 seconds. How can you?" Angry footsteps echoed differently than normal ones. Also, she's muttering about irresponsible executives and PR nightmares. His assistant burst through the door exactly when Sera predicted, tablet clutched like a weapon. "Mr. Cross, you have a meeting with the Titan delegation in 40 minutes, and the quarterly reports need your signature before." She stopped, registered the grease on his shirt, his actual smile, Sera calmly cleaning tools. "What is happening?" "I'm learning gravity regulation," Julian said. Reschedule Titan. You can't just. I can. I'm the CEO. Allegedly, that means something. His assistant looked between them, clearly recalculating something. Sir, people are talking. Photos from the banquet. Let them talk. Julian turned to Sera. Dinner, somewhere without dress codes. You're covered in machine grease. Perfect first date aesthetic. Still negotiating if it's a date. Fair enough. His assistant made a small, despairing noise. Sera grinned, those long ears catching the workshop's fluorescent light, and said, There's a noodle place on deck 23. Terrible ambience, excellent soup. You buying? Obviously. Then maybe it's a date after all. 3 weeks changed everything and nothing. Julian still ran Cross Dynamics, still attended meetings, still signed contracts worth billions. But now he escaped to deck 47 between conference calls, learning to fix things with his hands, while Sera explained the philosophy of her people. How presence mattered more than position, how contentment wasn't the same as complacency. They explored forgotten observation decks where workers took breaks, shared meals in cafeterias where nobody recognized him or cared. Sera taught him to hear the subtle sounds of a space station breathing, the difference between healthy mechanical hums and concerning rattles. Julian found himself laughing more, sleeping better, feeling less like a performance and more like a person. Then the photo hit the gossip feeds. Someone had captured them in the noodle shop, Julian's head thrown back laughing at something Sera said, grease still visible on his collar. Within hours, speculation exploded. Who was the mysterious alien woman? Was this appropriate for a CEO? What did this mean for Cross Dynamics' image? His board called an emergency meeting. This looks irresponsible, Director Kim said, tablet displaying the offending photo. Dating station maintenance staff sends the wrong message about judgment and what? Julian interrupted. That I'm human. That I have a life outside quarterly projections. That you're distracted, unfocused. I closed the Ganymede contract last week. Ahead of schedule, under budget. Our stock's up 18%. He leaned forward. I'm not distracted. I'm finally paying attention to what matters. The meeting dissolved into arguments about optics and perception. Julian let them talk, thinking about Sera's words from the night before. Your people spend so much energy worrying about how things look, you forget to check if they're real. He found her later in the workshop, fielding her own pressure. Her supervisor, her coworkers, people who saw Julian as either a betrayal of working-class values or an opportunity to exploit. They think I'm using you, she said, not looking up from her work. For money or status or whatever. Are you? I'm using you for terrible jokes and occasional help with repairs. She finally met his eyes. But this is complicated, Julian. Your world and mine don't exactly overlap. So we build a bridge. Bridges are engineering projects. They take time, planning, compromise. But she was smiling slightly. Also, they're expensive and occasionally collapse. I'm good at expensive engineering projects. Are you good at compromise? Julian thought about his calendar, packed with obligations he'd never questioned. His penthouse apartment where he slept alone, surrounded by expensive things he didn't care about. The performance of success versus the actual experience of living. I'm learning. His holocom buzzed. Another merger meeting, this one potentially defining his career. The Titan delegation, finally rescheduled, waiting in a conference room 70 decks above. Contracts to review. Decisions that affected thousands of jobs across multiple worlds. Or he could stay here, in this cramped workshop that smelled like honest work, with someone who saw him as just Julian instead of Julian Cross, CEO. It shouldn't be a choice. The meeting mattered. His responsibilities mattered. But so did this. I'm supposed to be in a conference room right now, Julian said. I know, your assistant sent 3 increasingly desperate messages. My ears picked up the vibrations. Let me ask you something real. He moved closer. If I stay, if I keep showing up here covered in grease, eating cheap noodles, learning to fix gravity regulators, what does that look like? Long term. Sera set down her tools, those pointed ears tilted in thought. Probably messy, definitely complicated. Your board will hate it. My coworkers will gossip, will argue about whose world we're visiting and why it matters. That's not encouraging. But it'll be real, no performance, no calculation, just two people figuring it out. She reached for his hand, her calloused fingers against his. My people believe in balance, not perfection. Not some fairy tale, just honest effort toward something that matters. Julian's holocom buzzed again. 17 floors above, important people waited for important decisions. He thought about Sera's question from their first real conversation. What was he actually doing here? He was choosing presence over performance, connection over calculation, the difficult uncertainty of something real over the comfortable prison of success. Teach me, he said, squeezing her fingers. How to be here, actually here. It starts with admitting you want to be, not that you should be. I want to be here, with you, learning to fix things and eat overpriced pastries and hear space stations breathe. Even when it's complicated. Especially then. Sera pulled him closer, stood on tiptoes, kissed him gently. Okay then. But you're still terrible at gravity regulation. I have an excellent teacher. Flattery won't improve your technical skills. Worth a try. His holocom buzzed one final time. Julian silenced it completely, set it aside, and picked up a tool. Outside, Zenith Prime turned in its slow orbit, full of people performing importance. In this small workshop on Deck 47, two people chose something harder and more valuable. The courage to simply be genuine together, across all the distances that separate anyone, human or otherwise, in this vast and complicated universe. Somewhere above, a meeting happened without him. Somehow, the galaxy kept turning anyway.